Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever feel a bit alone even when you're surrounded by people? This new study dives deep into exactly that feeling. Social disconnection, consisting of loneliness and social isolation, is increasingly recognized as a significant public health problem. This cross-sectional population study aims to investigate the prevalence of social disconnection in the general adult population of the Slovak Republic and its associations to socio-demographic, economic, and health indicators. It turns out that feeling lonely or socially disconnected is a pretty big deal for our health. And this study from the Slovak Republic wanted to figure out just how common it is there. And what might be linked to it. They looked at things like age, money, and even our mental and physical health. So, how did they do it? They talked to over 3,000 adults in the Slovak Republic. Imagine a big survey where lots of people shared their feelings and experiences. They used interviews and questionnaires to gather all sorts of information. The study was done in November 2024, so it is super fresh. And what did they find? Well, it is pretty significant. About a quarter of the adults they surveyed, 25.3%, said they felt lonely, and almost 1 in 5, 19.1%, were socially isolated. That means they didn't have many social contacts. Even more telling, about 10% of people felt both lonely and isolated at the same time. That is a big chunk of the population, struggling with bad connections. They also noticed some patterns. For instance, women reported feeling lonelier than men. Older adults, especially those 65 and over, were much more likely to be lonely and socially isolated. This makes sense, as life changes can sometimes lead to fewer social interactions. People with only elementary school education also reported higher rates of both loneliness and isolation compared to those with more education. Interestingly, people living in big cities seem to feel lonelier than those in smaller towns or rural areas. And guess what else matters? How much money people felt they had made a big difference too. Those who reported having a hard time or a very hard time financially were much more likely to be lonely and socially isolated. This really highlights how economic struggles can spill over into our social lives. They also looked at different living situations. People living alone were way more likely to be lonely and socially isolated. On the flip side, people in two-parent households seem to have lower rates. This is a really important finding. People who felt discriminated against had much higher rates of loneliness and social isolation. Almost half of them reported feeling lonely. This points to how unfair treatment can really damage our sense of belonging. Now, here is where it gets really serious. They found strong links between feeling lonely or isolated and how people rated their own health. People who were lonely or isolated were much more likely to say their mental and physical health was bad or very bad. Look at this. For mental health, nearly 9% of lonely people said it was bad or very bad compared to a tiny fraction of those who weren't lonely. It is a huge difference. The same pattern held true for physical health. Lonely and isolated individuals were significantly more likely to report bad or very bad physical health. It seems like feeling alone takes a real toll on our bodies. The researchers also used fancy math called logistic regression to see which factors independently predicted loneliness and isolation. They found that things like not having a partner, being unemployed, feeling like you have a low social status, and especially struggling with depression all predicted higher loneliness for social isolation. Household size, employment status, and depression were also key factors. And a super important predictor for both loneliness and social isolation was whether someone was being treated for a mental illness. This suggests that while mental health issues can lead to disconnection, disconnection can also make mental health problems worse, creating a difficult cycle. So, what does all this mean? The researchers emphasize that a significant portion of the Slovak population is experiencing social disconnection. This isn't just a minor inconvenience, it is a genuine public health challenge. They point out that older individuals, especially women with less education, people facing financial difficulties, and even new parents on maternity or paternity leave are at higher risk. It is particularly interesting that parents on leave reported higher loneliness even if they weren't isolated. This means you can be surrounded by family and still feel profoundly alone, perhaps due to the immense demands of childcare or feeling a lack of understanding. And the finding that discrimination is a major driver of social disconnection is a critical takeaway. It highlights the need for societal changes that promote inclusivity and combat prejudice. The study strongly suggests that social disconnection isn't just about being sad. It is deeply intertwined with both our mental and physical well-being. The researchers are calling for national policies policies that specifically address social disconnection, especially for vulnerable groups like the elderly, those in financial hardship, discriminated individuals, and parents. Now, like all good science, this study has its limitations. The researchers mentioned that they used a shorter questionnaire for loneliness, which might not be perfect for everyone. Also, because this was a snapshot in time, they can't definitively say that loneliness causes poor health. It is possible that poor health makes people lonely, or that other factors are involved. They are planning a follow-up study to look at these connections over time, which is great, and they also excluded people living in institutions who are known to be at high risk for loneliness. Overall, this research paints a clear picture. Social disconnection is a serious issue with wide-ranging consequences. It is not just about feeling a bit down, it impacts our overall health. The call to action for focused policies and support for at-risk populations is a vital reminder that strong social connections are not a luxury, but a necessity for a healthy society. What do you think about these findings? Does this resonate with your own experiences or observations? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science explained simply, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the fascinating world of the human mind. Thanks for watching.